A while back, I made a video talking about domain clashing and some concepts for it. I went over 3 concepts, one being the generic keybind mash game from Jujutsu Infinite and Sorcerer Battlegrounds, another being the deal more damage to the other person concept, and the third being Osumania 4K, which I still want, by the way. At the end of that video, I asked people to talk about their ideas for domain clashing, and in this video, I'm going to review some of them and talk about why they work or why they don't work, and if they'd be a good idea for the game. I'll be a little bit harsh with my criticism, but I do appreciate everyone who sent one for taking the time and also having the courage to put their ideas out there. There's also some overlapping ideas out there, and I couldn't get in every single suggestion, so I tried to cover as many unique concepts as I could. And I hope that whatever suggestions you had are covered to some extent by what I say in this video. Before we start reviewing suggestions though, make sure to hit the subscribe button for even more Jujutsu Shenanigans analysis and information. Now, let's start reviewing. For the first domain clashing suggestion I'm going to read today, I'll take a look at one from Carter Parson 3401, who comes at us with 4 different ideas. The first one is that you have to kill the other domain user to win. This is useless. I'm gonna say it flat out, this just doesn't really work, because if you're in a one-on-one and you kill the other domain user to get your domain to win, they're already dead at that point. So you're not really getting any value out of the domain. That's the only reason that's the reason this one just fundamentally fails. It just can't work because by that point, your domain gets 0 value unless someone else is in the domain with you, because that other domain user is already dead. So it's useless in 1v1s, which is a problem with it. The second one is there's a timer at the top of the screen, and whoever has the most health after the time wins. I mean, only issue I see with this is that some characters don't have equalized health. For example, Hikari has 100 health, and Sukuna I think has 85. But other than that, I think this is I like this concept generally. It's a good way to force people to fight and also feels alive. It's really just the same as the whoever deals more damage one, but with this key difference being that it's more health and not more damage, which kind of screws with it a little bit, but not in a bad way. The third suggestion says that you can only use melee attacks in the domain since your curse technique is burnt out. My only problem with that is, where's the domain clashing part? I like the concept of your curse technique being burnt out, and thus you can't attack people with melee attacks, but I guess he forgot to add in the part where one person's domain overtakes the other in the clash. So this needs to have more added to it. That's the problem with the third one. It's just lacking the key detail, which is how is one person going to win the clash? What is the conditional? And finally, for the fourth suggestion he adds, the domain can slightly affect people in the domain instead of fully affecting them. For example, if a Gojo and Sukuna domain clash, then the slashes would be way weaker, and Infinite Void would only slow people down instead of freezing them. I think this is a cool concept, kind of. It's definitely a balanced one, and people are still gonna get value out of it from both people having nerfed domains. So I like this concept in general, just because it feels more balanced than the other ones, and also feels complete. It's not really domain clashing in the sense that one person's domain overtakes the other, more like merged domains, but it's not a bad concept because of that. It's still a pretty functional concept that I think would work well. I like it, and I think if Z wants an idea, this one could work. Though there's probably a lot of other suggestions out there that would also work too, though we haven't taken a look at them yet, so we'll see. The next suggestion I'm going to look at is Gaming with Christopher 2901, who says that you can choose a minigame to do. Choosing the minigame will require you to get 2 times the points as the other person to win, so that one person doesn't get completely busted at one minigame and win all of them. And of course, if both players choose the same minigame, then it's just a regular more points than the other person to win. That's a little bit weird. The phrasing on it is weird, specifically. Choosing the minigame will require you to get 2 times the points as the other person to win. It doesn't make sense for one specific reason, because not all minigames are equal. They have to be standardized. The rate at which you get points in Flappy Bird is much, much slower than the rate that you get points in Osu Catch. Because Osu Catch is much more fast-paced, and you get a lot of points. You can reach probably like 85 points in a minute or something, while Flappy Bird, you probably end up at like 20 points in that same amount of time. So the minigames in this game just aren't equal. That's the only problem with it. So it has to be the same minigame somehow. And I think a better way to do this is that it 50-50s it. So you can choose, both players choose a minigame, and they pool between a 50-50 shot. It's either one person's minigame or the other person's minigame. That way it would be standardized and both players on the same field, unlike how the original suggestion is, where both players could be playing different minigames and it'd just be unbalanced in that case, even with the 2 times point disadvantage thing. So I think it's a cool idea. It's just there's some problems with it that aren't too hard to smooth out. Cool idea, good rating for me. The next suggestion I'm going to take a look at is from Lee So, who says, once 2 or more people initiate a domain clash, everyone in the range of the domain will be teleported into a domain, which is a combined version. And next to every domain user's character will appear a bar similar to Mahito's domain. The bar gets higher with the more damage they deal to the other player, and whoever fills up their bar first will win the domain clash. I like the concept, mostly because it encourages people to actually fight instead of stalling out for time. So I like this one specifically. This concept, which I've also seen some other people bring up, but we have to pick one comment specifically. Sorry to those people who said this concept as well. I like it because it encourages people to fight. It feels more alive than the other type of minigames that people suggest, because people are actually having to fight each other and interact with each other instead of just playing some non-interactive game like rock, paper, scissors, which I'll also talk about later because some other people suggested that. Rock, paper, scissors, and I don't personally like that concept, but I'll get to that later. So I like the concept of having to fill up a bar because it encourages people to actually play the game and not just sit in a corner and fulfill some odd conditional. So any kind of concept that makes you want to play the game and actually interact with it is good in my book. This one is good. One thing to note, which is just a nitpick really, is making a combined version of all the domains would take a lot of effort from Z, but I mean, that's more just a limitation, not a problem on the suggestion itself. So overall, pretty good suggestion. The next suggestion I'm going to look at is from Planet Atef, who has 2 ideas. The first one is that both domains will merge together and both will be active at the same time, allowing both users to deal damage. This is pretty much the same as the merge domains but they're both weaker suggestion, but it's missing the both are weaker part that is very key here, which it is very, very key here. The both domains parts, because the both are weaker parts, because in that case, one person is stunned while the other person is getting sliced to bits. So neither players are going to be able to deal damage because if one unblocks, they're going to die, and if the other person, well, the other person can't even do anything because they're infinitely stunned. So it's missing a very key word here, a very key phrase that makes this entire thing not work, but I get what they're going for, though we've already seen that suggestion. The second suggestion is the one I want to actually talk about. It has you adjust your domain size, which makes it a guessing game, and the player with the larger size ends up winning the clash. But there will also be negatives to making a large size, like getting rid of the ultimate bar, less domain time, etc. And to stop players from choosing the max limit. And if both players have the same exact size, then both are going to get cancelled. Making your domain smaller will increase the domain time and damage. This one is like a bidding war. So whoever bids more, hence like who gives up more of their domain, gets the actual domain. But the problem here is that why would you ever settle for risk? Why would you ever risk not winning the clash just to have the potential to get actual better domain time when you can guarantee always getting the domain, or at the very least ending up neutral? Like, it just isn't enough of a, there's not enough of a disadvantage to bidding on the max, because everyone's gonna bid for the max. Even if you're sacrificing a lot of your domain time and ultimate bar, it's still safer to do something like that than trust that the other person for some reason sets their domain size really low and gets canceled out by you. So you're always going to want to go for the max value because it's just safer. That's the problem with this. There's no real reason to go for the max value because it's way too risky to not do that. It's just an oversight, really, that holds this suggestion back. It's an interesting concept, And it's creative too. I appreciate the creativity, it's just it doesn't work because of that limitation. The final suggestion I'm going to look at for how domain clashing will work is that when both players open their domain at the exact same time, then both ultimate bars will decrease rapidly until one fully depletes. And there's some penalties for this. If your domain wins, you get 40% of your ult bar back, while the other person has a penalty of 5% damage, and they get hit by your domain expansion. I have a problem with this specifically, which is, first, that it doesn't feel alive. There's no real interaction here. It's just a guessing game of, do I have more domain meter, or do they have more domain meter? And in some cases, you might also be better off just not partaking in this. Like, if you know your awakening is low, and you can tell actually, you can, in a 1v1, a straight 1v1, you can tell if you have more awakening or if you have less awakening than the other person. Specifically, like, because if it's a person who awakens first, whoever awakens first obviously is going to have less ultimate bar, so they're guaranteed to lose a clash in that 1v1. It's just a suggestion that doesn't work for a couple of reasons. One, because there's no real interaction in it. It's just a matter of circumstance and like what happens when you open your domain. So there's no like mini game or fighting to actually do the clash. It's just what is the condition both players are in when they enter that domain clash, which is boring in my opinion. And the second problem with it is that you know already. It's not really a guess or a gambit, like I think what this guy wanted it to be, which would have been cool, but whatever. It's not really a guess or a gambit or RNG really. It's, you know that the other person has less awakening meter than you, or that they have more awakening meter than you, based on who's awakened first. So it just doesn't really work because there's no reason to try domain clashing when you know you're gonna lose. That's the problem with it. There's no reason to domain clash when you know that you are going to lose. And that's why I don't like the suggestion. I appreciate the creativity and also the inspiration from the source material, but gameplay-wise, it doesn't work. With a lot of these suggestions, they were pretty creative, and a good number of them felt like concepts that would fit right into the game. Those that didn't feel like they would work in a game were still at least very creative, and mostly ran into issues because they tried to follow the source material too much, tried to be too creative, or forgot about some important details that make or break their suggestion. Still, every single one of these is cool, and everyone who took the time to write one is cool for making an idea in the first place. Now with that, we're at the end of the video. If you enjoyed watching this, then please take the time to subscribe so that you're notified of other Jujutsu Shenanigans videos, and so that you can support me in my creation of content on YouTube. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye.